Here are the top stories of the news. National Economic Council approves a release of 83 billion naira to address flooding in Nigeria. Ogun State government bans graduation ceremonies for pupils in nursery, kindergarten, and non-terminal classes. And the foreign scene, 18 killed in southern Lebanon following series of Israeli airstrikes overnight. Good afternoon and welcome to Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. I am Femi Ojo. The National Economic Council has approved the release of over 83 billion naira under the Anticipatory Action Trust Fund to address the recurring challenge of flooding across the country. The approval was granted at the NEC meeting chaired by Vice President Kashim Shettima at the Council Chamber of the State House, Abuja, on Thursday. Addressing State House correspondents shortly after the meeting, the Governor of Cross River State, Basi Otu, said a total of over 166 billion naira had initially been proposed for the Anticipatory Action Trust Fund. However, he disclosed that NEC approved the sum of 83.2 billion naira. The fund is expected to support proactive measures, including early warning systems, emergency preparedness, and other flood mitigation initiatives designed to reduce the devastating effect of seasonal flooding. Speaking at the meeting, Shettima said the President Bola Tinubu administration's reform agenda must now produce visible results across the Federation.
Of funds for the implementation of the Anticipatory Action Task Force by the Honorable Minister, Budget and Economic Planning. And the purpose of the request was to seek the consideration of the Council for the approval and disbursement of funds through the Federal Account Allocation Committee to facilitate the implementation of the approved Anticipatory Action Task Force interventions aimed at mitigating the impact of anticipated flooding and other climate-related agencies across the country. We know that flooding now is almost an occurring decimal, and federal government were very happy that they are putting some retroactive steps to make sure that the mitigation comes on in time to save the states. And of course, those states that are prone to it were mentioned. The prayer actually was the Council is requested to approve the disbursement of the sum of 166 billion, 422 million, 363,763 naira only through FAC to the designated implementing agencies and beneficiaries in order to facilitate the implementation of the approved Anticipatory Action Task Force interventions. Their resolutions were as follows. Council noted the importance of the AATF in addressing disasters and emergencies across the country. Council also underscored the fact that NEC must act promptly and must not be seen as always reacting to situations rather than being proactive when these disasters occur. Council approved the sum of 83,211,818,881 naira 50 kobo, being 50% of the proposed budget for the AATF, with a plan to review the framework at subsequent meetings as part of broad measures aimed at tackling flood and related disasters.
The All Progressives Congress has condemned the African Democratic Congress, ADC, People's Democratic Party, PDP, Social Democratic Party, SDP, Nigeria Democratic Congress, NDC, and others for endorsing the House of Representatives Minority Caucus's lead or leave call on President Bola Tinubu over worsening insecurity in the country, describing the position as politically motivated and unfair. On Wednesday, the Minority Caucus of the House of Representatives delivered a scathing assessment of the state of the nation, accusing the government of President Bola Tinubu of failing to tackle worsening insecurity, deepening economic hardship, and mounting threats to democratic institutions, while allegedly focusing on political calculations ahead of the 2027 general elections. Addressing journalists at the National Assembly complex in Abuja, Minority Leader of the House, Fred Agbedi, said the country was facing one of its most difficult periods since the return to democratic rule in 1999, citing persistent insecurity, rising poverty, and growing public frustration. Meanwhile, APC Director of Publicity Bala Ibrahim rejected calls for Tinubu's resignation, describing the call and claims that Nigeria was tilting towards a failed state as reckless and misleading. Retired military officers and associates of late retired Major General Abe Abubakar have called for comprehensive reforms of Nigeria's security architecture following the retired general's death after he was abducted by bandits in Katsina State. The appeal was made yesterday during a press conference in Kaduna, addressed by retired Brigadier General Ismail Abdullahi, who spoke on behalf of colleagues, friends, and associates of the deceased officer. Retired Brigadier General Abdullahi described the death of General Abubakar as a tragic reminder of the growing insecurity across the country, noting that the retired officer died after being kidnapped by bandits in the Matazu area of Katsina State. While acknowledging efforts by the federal government and the Katsina State government that led to the rescue of the deceased wife, Hajia Amina Rabi Abubakar, retired Brigadier General Abdullahi said the incident highlighted the urgent need for stronger measures to tackle banditry, kidnapping, and terrorism. And still talking security, Edo State Governor Monday Okpeholo has issued a blunt warning to criminals operating in the state, stressing that those who persist in crime will face prosecution and he will personally sign their execution warrant. Okpeholo made the declaration on Thursday during a parade of suspects at the Edo State Police Command headquarters in Benin City, where he also rewarded officers who arrested a suspect linked to Sunday's kidnapping at the vegetable market. Governor Okpeholo said he acted swiftly after the Sunday incident, immediately directing the Commissioner of Police to ensure the perpetrators were caught. One suspect was subsequently arrested, one was neutralized during the operation, and two others remain at large. The governor also pushed back against criticism of the federal government's handling of security, arguing that the results being recorded on the ground are evidence that President Bola Tinubu's administration is funding security operatives effectively. The federal government has hinted at possible measures against South African companies operating in Nigeria, including telecommunications giant MTN, as outrage grows over the continued harassment and attacks on Nigerians living in South Africa. Minister of Foreign Affairs Ambassador Bianca Odumegu Ojukwu disclosed these while addressing concerns over the worsening anti-migrant attacks in South Africa and the evacuation of Nigerians from the country. The minister said Nigeria had exercised restraint and continued to pursue diplomatic engagement, but warned that the government might be compelled to explore other options if the attacks persist. The minister, however, stressed that any retaliatory measures would have to follow constitutional provisions and due legislative process. In other news, Governor Basiotu has approved the immediate suspension of the sale of tickets, collection of levies, and all related charges imposed on intercity transport operators across Cross River State. The directive followed a meeting between the Cross River State government and the leadership of the Intercity Drivers Association over concerns regarding multiple ticketing and excessive levies affecting transport operators. In a statement issued on Thursday by the Chief Press Secretary and Special Advisor on Media and Publicity to the Governor, Linus Opogo, the suspension takes immediate effect pending further directives from the government. According to the statement, the governor's approval covers all forms of ticket sales, levies, and related charges being collected from intercity transport operators by government agents and security operatives. The Ogun State Ministry of Education, Science and Technology has issued a new directive prohibiting graduation ceremonies for pupils in nursery, kindergarten, and other non-terminal classes across both public and private schools in the state. The circular was addressed to all administrators of public and non-state schools through the zonal education officers. It follows an earlier directive and is described as part of efforts to reduce financial pressure on parents and guardians. According to the ministry, graduation ceremonies will now be restricted strictly to primary 6, junior secondary school JSS 3 and senior secondary school SSS 3 students who are considered to be completing key stages of formal education. It added that for these categories, ceremonies are expected to be conducted in a modest manner and at no financial cost to learners, parents, or guardians. The circular also specifically banned what it described as extravagant practices during graduation events. You're watching Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. We will be right back after this break. Please stay with us.